Well, the last time we saw Serena, she was sitting on the side of the road. Very, very hot. We got her home. It took 24 hours to get her home. And the problem was the fans. They're old, they were drawing too much current, and they'd burned out one of the relays. So we fixed the relay, but the problem wasn't solved. We still had a problem with overheating. The water hoses had all been softened by the heat, and one by one they kept bursting. I finally thought I had it all sorted, took it for a drive, got about 10k away from home, and another one that I didn't even know existed burst. This time when I fixed it, it ran beautifully for about 15 minutes. But then suddenly it started blowing a lot of white smoke, and I knew that my worst fears had happened. I'd done the head gasket. That was when I decided enough was enough and it was time to walk away. So for the next few months she just sat there while I pulled out all the camping gear ready to put it into a new vehicle.
And it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the journey's done and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her.
I spent a couple of months looking around for something else. I did actually find one thing that I really liked, one vehicle, and it was within my budget. I could have fixed it up really well. But it belonged to a friend of mine, and unfortunately he'd offered first choice to somebody else, and they took him up on it, so I missed out on that one. I really didn't find anything that I liked as much as Serena, and so I thought, well, why not give it a go and see if I can do something with it. And I've changed head gaskets before, but I've never done it on an overhead cam machine, and I could see looking at the manual that it was going to be one hell of a job. It really needed to go up on a hoist, because a lot of the things they were saying had to be done from underneath. Well, I don't have a hoist, it's sitting up here on the farm, and I tried lifting it up with the tractor, but the tractor wasn't strong enough, so that was a silly idea anyway. So I decided to strip it down and have a look how bad the damage really was. And yeah, it was pretty bad, but we'll see how we go. Well, the first thing I noticed when I got the lid off was that, oh boy, I shouldn't have left it so long with all that water in the motor. The rust on the camshafts looks pretty bad. I'm going to have to do a lot of polishing there. As for the gunk that came out when I drained the oil, well, the less said about that the better. Pulling off the exhaust manifold was pretty straightforward, so that didn't give me any problems. The inlet manifold was a different story, with a total spaghetti junction of injectors, hoses and leads. I removed the injectors and anything that was in front of the actual manifold itself, and then took out the 10 manifold bolts. Nothing still wanted to move. I had a quick look at the manual and saw there were 3 brackets underneath that had to be removed. That meant crawling underneath the car to get to those. This seemed to cause some amusement for the locals. I was starting to collect a lot of nuts and bolts, so I grabbed an old packet of envelopes that I had and started labelling them as I took them off. This was also a good time to start marking the timing chain, where everything was going to go back to, because nothing was allowed to move once I took it all apart. With everything unbolted from the head, it was finally time to start taking the head bolts out. I wasted an awful lot of time trying to find the right size spanner before I realised it actually needed a big Allen key. The manual told me there were 4 outside bolts as well on the head, so I found those easily enough. 2 of them on the side of the motor were very straightforward. The other 2 were round the front, and I thought they were going to be a real problem, but as it turned out, I was able to get a spanner in there, and they came out without too much trouble. The sight that was waiting when I took the head off was not a pretty one. The cylinders were full of water and the cylinder walls were really quite rusty. It took a lot of fine sanding to get them back to where they were quite smooth again. As expected, the head gasket was a bit of a disaster, but that's not a problem because that's what we're here to replace. So that's about where I'm at for now, and I've got to wait till the head gasket arrives and then we'll put it all back together and see how she goes.
Oh, I know you're going to miss me when I'm gone. You're gonna miss me for my song. You're gonna miss me all along. Oh, I know you're going to miss me when I'm gone.